And I'll be speaking to business leaders here in Grimsby about the state of the economy and what they want to hear from party leaders on the election campaign. Good afternoon from Grimsby, one of Sky News' target towns during this general election campaign. It's a big moment for the economy today and some good news for the Chancellor. After a 3-year battle, inflation has finally come down to the Bank of England's target. Rishi Sunak called it great news, but warned that it could rise again if Labour wins the election. Labour, meanwhile, said people were still worse off under Conservative rule. Well, official figures show that headline rate of inflation fell to 2% in May, down from 2.3% in April. Meanwhile, the headline rate has been reined in primarily by food prices rising more slowly than a year ago. Inflation for all services remains at 5.7%. That has put a bit of a dampener on hopes for an early rate cut. But as you can see on this chart, today is the first time overall that the headline rate of inflation has been at 2% since July 2021. Well, that's before the cost of living crisis began, which led to a 40-year high for inflation of 11.1% in October 2022. Our business correspondent Paul Kelso is with me in Grimsby here today, and he's been getting reaction to today's inflation figures.
What's inflation got to do with the price of fish? Well, in Grimsby, they know the answer. Sky News' target town is the historic centre of the food processing industry as inflation finally returns to the Bank of England's target. Here they say the statistics and the slab tell the same story.
In terms of fish, prices have actually dropped over the last couple of years. We had the container crisis after COVID when stuff that we import from the Far East went through the roof. And then that's come back to normal, if not below what it was pre-COVID. And fresh prices have stayed steady.
Falling food inflation is welcome for the hospitality trade, battered by COVID and cost pressures on businesses and their customers that the boss of one of Britain's biggest pub chains told me will linger.
Energy cost, food cost, drink cost, labour cost. You know, these are all costs that have been volatile over the last couple of years, and inflation doesn't go up or come down in straight lines either. So, you know, we're seeing some areas come down, which is encouraging. But the impact of the last 2 to 3 years is that the cost base of running a small business is significantly higher.
Predictably on the campaign trail, the Chancellor toasted success, while the woman who wants to replace him said consumers are still drowning their sorrows.
Today's inflation numbers show that in the UK it is lower than nearly any other major economy. A year ago it was higher than France, Germany, America, Japan, and that shows the difficult decisions we've taken have paid off.
I don't think the economy has turned a corner. Many people are still really struggling because although inflation is back at target and that is welcome, of course it doesn't mean that any of those price rises have been undone.
On the front in Cleethorpes, the political debate is less important than the pound in people's pockets.
£3.60.
There you
I
go.
don't know. Where do you start with that one?
Inflation's coming down. We're supposed to be feeling like we turned the corner. Is that how it feels?
Is it really? No.
No?
Not at all.
Cost of living still rising?
Inflation is rising.
They need to put wages up. We're all support workers and our economy is disgraceful, what we get paid.
Disgraceful.
Are you feeling things getting any easier?
Not really, no. Not at all. Everything's still as expensive as it is. If it goes down in the next 3 or 4 months, I'll retract that statement and I'll say fair enough, I was wrong. But I don't think it will.
Falling inflation is good news, but it will take time before households feel the benefit of this change in the economic weather. Underlying services inflation is still quite high, which means the Bank of England's unlikely to cut interest rates until September. And prices of clothes, of food, of rents are all still 20% higher than they were 3 years ago. If this is the turning of the economic tide, it may have come too late to change the course of the election. Paul Kelso, Sky News in Grimsby and Cleethorpes.
Well, we're in Grimsby today because Sky News has chosen the constituency of Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes as our target towns for this election campaign. Well, let's have a look at what happened here at the last general election. Well, this was the state of play in 2019 if we mapped the last election results onto new constituency boundaries. The Conservatives secured a majority, but current polls suggest Labour could win back control. And it's in towns like Grimsby and Cleethorpes on the east coast where the battle could be decided. Grimsby returned a Labour MP in every election between 1945 and 2017 until 2019, when it returned a Conservative MP. Well, Labour wants this traditional red wall seat back in 2024. Cleethorpes became a constituency in 1997. It was a Labour stronghold until 2010. For this year's general election, there's a new single constituency, Great Grimsby and Cleethorpes. In this new constituency, Labour would require a swing of 11.7% to win the seat from the Conservatives. Well, I'm here today at the headquarters of My Energy, one of the major businesses here in Grimsby. It's best known for its Zappy chargers, the first in the world to allow drivers to charge their electric vehicles with energy from solar panels. It's also the shirt sponsor for Grimsby Town Football Club. Joining me now is one of My Energy's co-founders, Jordan Brompton. Jordan, lovely to see you this afternoon, and thank you very much for hosting us here today. You set this business up with your business partner in 2016. What was the eureka moment behind it all?
Well, myself and Lee Sutton are born and raised in Grimsby, and we wanted to set it up here for economic growth. But what really sparked it is our experience in the renewable industry, and we wanted to bring energy independence to homeowners, essentially. So look at how we can maximise solar energy on the roof within the home and give customers control. So either to battery storage, to their car battery, or to decarbonise heat, to their hot water.
What was the biggest challenge launching the business back in 2016? Was access to capital a problem, for example?
Yeah, access to capital, it was something that me and Lee knew nothing about. So we put all of our own funds into it to begin with, remortgaged homes, used credit cards, and then actually started to gain orders and gain some traction and momentum from investors.
I mean, it's very, very high-tech here, the kit. Presumably, this is still quite a capital-intensive operation.
Yeah, not so much anymore now that we've made the investment. This is our base, this is our hometown, this is our HQ. But it was to begin with. We've invested in some of the best technology for SMT manufacturing. We do all of the manufacturing, barring the battery cells, in Grimsby here, as you can hear. So once the foundations are laid, that's pretty much it. We can just now manufacture products by the thousands.
Now, Grimsby's population has actually been falling over the last 10 years, down by 2.5%, I think. Has that made hiring people a challenge?
To be honest, it depends on what area of the business you're looking at. So if you're looking at production, it's not too difficult to recruit. If you're looking at things like marketing, HR, we tend to do that locally. But when it comes to firmware developers or electronic developers and people like that, it is quite hard, and we have to look further afield around the country. But we still do a lot of home work up here, people like to get together at this HQ.
You're very optimistic. I mean, walking through the centre of Grimsby last night, there were a lot of shuttered premises. It would be quite easy to get depressed about the state of the local economy. But if you dig a bit deeper, there is loads going on here. I mean, not only your business, but the whole sort of decarbonisation work that's going on around the greater Humber region.
Absolutely. And it does really pain me. I've lived here all my life, and it is pretty sad. This part of the country has been forgotten about for a long time, and there is still a long way to go, I can't lie. But one thing that you can't beat out of the Grimsby people is their tenacity and their grit and their determination. And we're seeing this shift from the food town and the fish industry to, we've gone from fish to chips, we like to say, microchips. Because of the energy estuary and because of Ørsted and the wind turbines, there's this new buzz in the atmosphere that there's actually purpose, there's an economy again booming, there's skills. So that's what we really saw and leaned into when we established My Energy, and we thought, if not, why not Grimsby? Why not give people a chance? I didn't have it growing up, so let's create it.
So what have you made of the election campaign thus far, and what do you as a business person want to hear from the prospective Prime Ministers?
I think you'll hear a lot of business people just say the same. Some consistency would be nice, especially in our sector, because the flip-flopping on the 2030 date to 2035 added so much uncertainty to consumers. And yet the car manufacturers have made the switch to electric, so it's just why confuse things when it's already moving? So I think consistency in the message is key, is what I could always ask for.
And in terms of what's happened today with inflation, does that really have much of an impact on your business?
I can only say yes, really, because hopefully it's bringing consumers' budgets back to a healthy level, because people haven't been spending as much, and we did feel that in 2023. We felt consumer spending dampen. So I think with inflation getting back to a more healthy rate will only improve the economy as a whole.
And one of the interesting aspects of the inflation number today was the fact that services inflation is still very high, and that in turn is being driven by wage inflation. What have you been doing on the wages front? Have you had to pay workers substantially more?
Not substantially more, market rate where we can, and we just assess it every single year. We make sure that we try and assess the gap and close the gap as much as possible, or pay more if we can. It just depends where the business is at the time and where the economy is.
All right, Jordan, we have to leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for hosting us. It's much appreciated.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Well, Grimsby's history is, of course, strongly linked with sea fishing, but as we've seen, nowadays the port town's economy is more focused on the growing renewable energy sector. Well, Hornsea 2, which is currently the world's largest offshore wind farm, is owned by the Danish company Ørsted, and it's operated and maintained from Grimsby. Joining me now is Ben Sykes, Vice President of Offshore and Head of Environment, Consenting and External Affairs at Ørsted. Ben, welcome to you. I mean,
thank you very much.
Hornsea 2 is up and running. You're now working on Hornsea 3. What sort of sums are being invested?
So Hornsea 3 is going to be our biggest project. It's also going to be the world's biggest offshore wind farm. We're in construction. That's in the sort of £8 to £9 billion investment range. So this is a major commitment that we've made to invest in British energy infrastructure. And of course, we're going to be operating it out of our base here in Grimsby. We've been here for over a decade now. It's quite an exciting thing to see it continuing to grow.
What made Grimsby the ideal place to base your operational headquarters?
Well, I suppose it starts with geography, of course. The wind farms that we operate, we've got 5 that we run out of Grimsby. They are all well accessible, easily accessible from the port here. The port itself is very good, but it's also the workforce. You know, we've built up a workforce of over 600 people here in our operations base. It's been fantastic to see that grow and to bring some of the workforce in. Over 80% of the people that we're working with in our operations base live within an hour's drive of Grimsby.
And you do all your training of your apprentices here as well?
That's right. We have a big apprenticeship programme here, also in other parts of the country as well. We've had 76 apprentices through our scheme, some of them still in it. We've had 24 of them now working on our wind farms offshore full-time. So it's been very successful. It's great that we work with local technical colleges and other training facilities here in Grimsby. So very much engaging with the local community to develop those skills.
And you're paying good money. I mean, the CEO of the Humber Freeport was telling me earlier today, someone's done a 3-year apprenticeship with you in their mid-20s. They can be earning upwards of £55,000 a year.
Yeah, these are really good quality long-term jobs that pay well. And, you know, we want to see our presence here really investing in the community. That's partly why we've also put £1 million into Grimsby's Emerging Youth Zones programme. That's really to help those in and around Grimsby see the opportunities beyond what they maybe can see at the moment.
So put your UK operations into the context of the wider Ørsted group for me.
So the UK is by far the largest part of Ørsted's global business. We do have large operations in Germany, in Denmark, in the Netherlands, in Taiwan now as well. And we've also just started up our first larger wind farm in the US. The UK remains absolutely at the heart of our business. And, 600 people here, 1,500 people across the UK.
Now, Keir Starmer has been complaining that there's too much ownership of the UK's energy industry in foreign hands. I mean, he means businesses like yours. That's part of the reason for setting up Great British Energy. Do we actually need it, though, given the sums being invested by the private sector?
So the private sector's invested around £50 billion in offshore wind farm infrastructure over the last 10 years. We alone have invested £16 billion into the UK, and we're going to invest the same again. So there are large sums coming in. I mean, we'll have to wait and see who forms the next government and what their plans are exactly around Great British Energy. There's a lot of work to be done, not just to build out our infrastructure, but also to bring new technologies through, things like hydrogen. Also investing in ports. We've got a great port here in Grimsby, but if we're going to build all the infrastructure we need to have an affordable, clean power system, then we need more of that.
But do we actually need Great British Energy, given the sums that are already being invested by the private sector?
Well, I think it very much depends. If we end up with a Labour government, we'll have to wait and see on the 5th of July what the outcome is. I think we'll have to wait and see if it is a Labour government, what their plans are. They've set out a few ideas, but there's definitely more to come in that space. So I look forward to seeing what happens if that's the outcome.
OK, Ben, got to leave it there. Really appreciate you joining me this afternoon. Thanks
very much.
Still to come here from Grimsby on Business Live. We'll be taking a look at how the markets have done this afternoon. Don't go away.
When the Taliban first time fell from the power, when international allies was in Afghanistan, when there was development time in Afghanistan, where we were trying our best as young girls and women of Afghanistan to participate actively in society and to stand for our right to change the narrative about women in Afghanistan. A country where it's war-torn country and male-dominated country. 8 years when first time Taliban took over, women and girls were not even allowed to go to school, and we were even not allowed to watch TV. When we came to the society after Taliban fell from the power, still it was new for people, and football was something quite new. It was not known. Women and girls were not playing football. And people were thinking that it's against the culture, it's against the religion. And they wanted women and girls to still stay in the kitchen and do the service at home and not come out. So it was not the Taliban only that we were scared, but it was also the mindset in the society that in a war-torn country and the culture that war changes. It was tough for women, and women always are the victims of all conflicts. It was the most beautiful moment, most beautiful memory, representing our country. It's the best pride that anyone can have, the best honor and privilege. We faced so much odds against us, where we were told and we were attacked. Many times we faced physical and a lot of pressure. Harassment and abuse from people in the society, where they told us we belong to the kitchen, but we made history. We believed in ourselves. We really fought hard to come and use our platform to be the voice for our voiceless sisters who are facing violence. And football was a tool for us. And we first time made history by playing for the first national team of Afghanistan and represented our country. That was the best moment for us, but it also came with a lot of challenges and risks towards our lives.
Welcome back to Grimsby. It's been a significant day today for the UK economy, with inflation falling to the magic number of 2%, the Bank of England's target rate. Let's have a look at how the markets have reacted to that news. I'll start off with the showing you what's been going on in the currency market. Sterling more or less unchanged right now against both the US dollar and the euro. Had a bit of a pop earlier on in the session, but largely pretty quiet just now. On the equity markets, well, it's been a largely downward day in continental Europe. All of the main European indices finishing in negative territory. Look again at the CAC 40 in the top right-hand corner of the screen, off 0.75%. There a lot of volatility in the French market now since the calling of that parliamentary election. Well, here in the UK, the FTSE 100 has finished with its head above water, finishing up just over 1/6% higher. Among the leading gainers today is the paper and packaging group Smurfit Kappa. That is on news that it will be included in S&P Dow Jones indices once it's completed its takeover of US Group Westrock. The share's nearly 5% to the good. Meanwhile, Vodafone has had a day in the sun. It raised €1.7 billion through the sale of an 18% stake in mast operator Indus Towers. Vodafone up 1.5% at the close. To the downside, Barclay Group, the house builder, has fallen after investors took fright at plans to invest more in the build-to-rent space. The share's off just under 6.5%. Outside the FTSE 100, the precision instrumentation and controls group Spectris, that's had a pretty torrid day today, off just over 5.5%. That's after it warned that results for the year will be at the bottom end of market expectations. To the upside, though, Games Workshop has risen after reporting that it expects profits this year to be at least £200 million, up from £171 million last time. Across the Atlantic, while Wall Street is closed today for a public holiday, the futures markets are in action, but no trading in the equity and bond markets. As for the oil price, well, that's ahead after a Ukrainian drone strike on a Russian oil terminal. A barrel of Brent crude will currently set you back $85.38 a barrel. That's up a little under 1/10% on the session. Well, with me today is Lucy Coates, Investment Director at JM Fin. Lucy, good to see you as ever this afternoon. The inflation numbers haven't really moved the markets that much, if you stand back and look at them at the cold light of day.
No, they haven't, because we'd expected this path. It's been a long time coming, but we've hit that 2%, which is great. We're now really within the peer group. We're in the middle of the pack. We were an outlier principally because of our sort of energy bill price capping mechanism, but actually we're now where we should be.
Yeah, I guess if things have moved, it's on the money markets where expectations of a rate cut in August are now fading away, and all the money seems to be on September now.
Yeah, September looks to be the first cut, and then the second cut, which we'd hoped for towards the end of the year, that's again the expectation has now fallen back. We might not get that, but it's all going to be about the data points. So we've hit 2% today, but it may well be that in the next couple of months we might see it rise slightly to 2.4%. And that's where the market's worrying.
Well, one of the big movers today, of course, was Barclay Group, the house builder. I mean, the numbers themselves were OK. It was what they said that seemed to have spooked investors.
Yeah, so people aren't really signing on the dotted line, so the activity is subdued. But they have raised forecasts for the year 2025. That's good news. It's the first house builder to do so in the last 2 years. But really, we're all waiting for those interest rates to cut, for activity to come back. But because they're now investing on a 10-year plan to effectively become a landlord, that's a different model. But Savills equally have said we need 1 million additional rental homes by 2031. So I think actually maybe the market's misreading this. It looks good news. OK, I mean, while we've got you, I'm interested to hear your views about what's going on in France just now. The CAC 40 has fallen by 6% since Emmanuel Macron called that snap election, off another 0.75% today. Yeah, I mean, I think because, we're seeing sort of party politics and, you're seeing sort of populist names coming up. Yeah, there is a fear that actually things are going to be quite unsettled in France. And France is one of the big economic drivers in Europe. Europe, is driven really pretty much by France and Germany. So I think it is a concern for investors there. Yeah, and worth pointing out that the UK stock market is now bigger in numerical terms than the French market again after this recent setback. Yeah, but we've had a bit of a resurgence, haven't we? Which is good to see in the home market. It's been long waited for, and certainly UK stocks do seem lowly valued in comparison to US peers, definitely. Yeah. Lucy, got to leave it there. It's been great having you with us here in Grimsby today. Do appreciate it. Thank you. Well, that's it from me for Grimsby today. Thank you very much indeed to our hosts, My Energy. Well, tomorrow, of course, we get a Bank of England decision. I will be on air tomorrow to talk you through all the details there. Thanks for joining me today. Have a good evening.